Good morning, students. How are you? I'm sure that you must have enjoyed the last class in which we have discussed about the history of Indian journalism. Today we are going to discuss a very new topic which is not very much new. You all are very much aware about this terminology that is called yellow journalism. As we are discussing about print journalism, historical perspective, today we shall be discussing about the yellow journalism, how it was originated, how this word came into practice. So just take a look. There is a very pet question whether you are trying for a state government run university or a central university in India, or whether you are appearing for national eligibility test NET examination in the media studies. There is a very pet question. Sometimes they ask, usually they ask, and very frequently, that which war is known as the first media driven war? Then your answer should be American-Spanish War of 1898. So why this war called first media driven war? So we have to move towards its historical perspective. What was the reason behind this terminology, as well as which media house or journalists, what was their role during that era, 1898. It was a very, a turning point for the history of the media. You might have heard two great personalities of journalism. One is Joseph Pulitzer and another one is William Randolph Hearst. Let's talk about Joseph Pulitzer. Joseph Pulitzer was the founder editor of New York World newspaper. You know, there is a very prestigious award journalism named after Pulitzer Prize. Journalism. There was another newspaper and another journalistic personality, that was William Randolph Hearst. He was the founder editor of New York Journal newspaper. So just remember these two newspapers, New York World and New York Journal. So New York Journal newspaper was founded by William Hearst and New York World was founded by Joseph Pulitzer. There was a cartoon, yellow kids ka. There was a character in a yellow dressed character, small kid, known as Hogan's Alley. It was featured by New York World newspaper, Joseph Pulitzer. There was a cartoonist. If we talk about Indian perspective, you might have heard there was a very well-known figure, the founder of Shiv Sena, Bal Thackeray. He has started his career as a cartoonist for a newspaper. You might have heard there was a very famous personality, Sudhir Tailang. His illustrations were also very famous, particularly in English print media. There was a person, R.F. Outcault. He was basically the artist of the Hogan Alley. So he was later hired by William Randolph Hearst. You know, there is a world tug of war. In India, if you look and if you talk about the Indian perspective, there are two very famous newspapers. One is Times of India and another one is Hindustan Times. There is a tug of war between these two prominent newspapers for their circulation, for their proximity, for as well as their, reach among Indian society, among Indian people. So the same way in 1890s was facing through, there were two famous newspapers, New York World and New York Journal. So just look at this picture, yellow journalism. You can see the way they create headlines, like there will be a sensation, there will be a melodrama, there will be a romance, there will be some other kind of things. Means elements which can cater public sentiment, or which can just like influence public in a larger way, in a very effective way. Sometimes they use some other means which are not correct means, which are very wrong kind of things, which are not very so some wrong precedences were also adopted by those journalists in that era. Actually, what was the first American-Spanish War? We should have a look at the Cuba at that time. Cuba was governed by Spain. There was a Spanish rule over Cuba. So Cuba was under the control of Spain, and Spain was in the neighborhood of US, America, as you all are aware. So to change the public opinion, these two newspapers started publishing sensational news like captivity of women, those who were under the captivity of Spanish forces, those Cuban, so their miseries, their plight, situation of kids who were languishing in jails, Spanish jails. So they have started publishing such kind of news stories in a very sensational way, and it has created anger among American people. So they put pressure, there was a kind of pressure created upon American government and America involved in a war with Spain, so that this term came into public dominance, the first media driven war. This term was originated, and this is the basically the history of yellow journalism. So if we talk about in a modern scenario, so any newspaper, any media house which is adopting such kind of means, sensation, melodrama, romance, or some other kind of things, just to attract the public sentiment, to garner the attention of the public, if they adopt wrong means, it comes under the category of yellow journalism. So this is the basic of yellow journalism. So there is a very so many viewpoints about this yellow journalism. Historian today claims that the first conflict to be influenced by the press was the Spanish-American War. While it may be overstanding things to argue that Hearst and other yellow journalists incited the war, it is undeniable that the media stoked public enthusiasm for it. This is the basic point. There was enthusiasm in the public to go for a war. So if you witness such kind of events, you can easily relate with the 1890s era of American journalism of that era in 1898, how they persuaded the American government to wage a war and involve in a war with Spain. So in nut and shell, we can say that these were the basics of yellow journalism, brief history of yellow journalism, and how it was when it was originated, and what was the history behind all these things. So your queries are most welcome, and so I conclude this at this time. So the house is open for your questions. Thank you very much. Have a great day.